Hello, I'm Andy Agathangelo. I'm carrying out this video interview of Peter O'Donnell in my capacity as chair of the Secretariat Committee to the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Personal Banking and Fairer Financial Services. I am also, however, the founder of the Transparency Task Force, which provides the Secretariat to the All-Party Parliamentary Group. Peter, thank you very much indeed for agreeing to have this interview with me. As you know, the conversation is being video recorded. The video recording will be placed on the APPG's website and will raise awareness of it through social media. You're carrying out this conversation with me on the basis that you have already provided a written submission to the APPG's call for evidence about the Financial Conduct Authority. Could I invite you, please, first of all, Peter, to tell us about yourself and outline just briefly to begin with, how you came to interact with the Financial Conduct Authority. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, Andy. I was a victim of investment fraud in 2002 when a good friend of mine introduced me to an investment opportunity with a firm of chartered accountants in Leicester known as Dobb White. He then introduced me to a bank manager from a high street bank based in Scotland who recommended the investment and how to raise funds through an equity release interest-only mortgage with his bank. He arranged borrowing through a broker in Northampton. My wife and I discussed and decided to go ahead. 2 weeks after that, after transferring the funds into the investment, an article in a London paper advised that the two partners in the firm, Dobb White, had been arrested for operating a Ponzi scheme. It was later reported that they had stolen over £125 million. Several years later, they received sentences in prison of 7.5 years. The bank manager was not implicated and was immediately retired by the bank. From this experience, I sought to help and I took legal action, seek legal advice and take legal action against the bank. I was not successful, but it did lead to the introduction of several professionals in the debt management and recovery field. From that, I promoted claims for a law firm in Preston, but joined what was later to become a law firm as an owner and director specialising in helping victims of investment fraud.
Thank you, Peter. The second question, what is your interest in or connection with the Financial Conduct Authority?
I was referred to the Financial Conduct Authority by one of the solicitors at the Financial Services Compensation Scheme because I had done work supporting their efforts to stop regulated companies phoenixing as new IFAs or as claims management companies. I had a video conference call with them and exchanged many emails, mainly to do with phoenixing, but especially their role in regulated companies that had become insolvent after losing complaints adjudicated by the Financial Ombudsman Service.
Thank you, Peter. Next question. Could you please briefly describe the interactions you have personally had with the FCA?
Yeah, pleasure. Acting as a director of a firm of solicitors specialising in acting for victims of regulated financial advisor mis-selling investments, in particular trying to understand the relationship between the Financial Conduct Authority and firms or their directors now being held to account for misadvising clients to transfer their pensions into investment scams. What I have discovered is that once insolvent or on application for insolvency, a regulated company is no longer held accountable by the Financial Conduct Authority as they are no longer regulated. In fact, there is no agency or body responsible for what was done when they were regulated. It falls on their victims and the insolvency practitioners if appointed. IPs are not trained or required by their regulators, company law or insolvency law, to consider those persons who are advised to risk their pensions or cash in high risk, unregulated, and often collective investment schemes designed to fail and hide their misfeasance in insolvency. The Financial Conduct Authority has no requirement to hold individuals to account, only regulated companies. Once insolvent, authorization to operate as a regulated entity is removed, and the firm, plus its directors and staff, are of no interest to the Financial Conduct Authority. No one supervises insolvency practitioners other than their regulators, which means their own industry, marking their own homework. Late last year, the Financial Conduct Authority issued a consultation paper on guidance for insolvency practitioners of regulated firms. I responded to that in detail. The guidance was issued in May, but has no teeth because the Financial Conduct Authority has no oversight of insolvency practitioners. This creates the opportunity for bad independent financial advisors to misadvise clients to invest and generate significant secret commissions from investment providers without fear of either being caught or in full knowledge that insolvency practitioners won't investigate or report them. I have tried to point out this significant anomaly to the Financial Conduct Authority and insolvency regulators, as well as the Insolvency Service. No one is interested. In fact, I reported 7 insolvency practitioners after I informed them in writing for not investigating directors of formerly regulated companies for what amounted to fraud or dishonest assistance via the Insolvency Service complaints gateway. All were rejected and not sent to the respective insolvency regulators.
Peter, thank you. In broad terms, what have your dealings with the FCA been like?
Well, trying to affect interest to lead to change, to overcome the huge gap between the role and responsibilities of the Financial Conduct Authority and insolvency, to investigate.
Thank you. And have you experienced situations where interacting with the FCA has been helpful to either yourself or others? If so, please go on to explain what made the interactions helpful.
Well, this is going to be very brief. No, I didn't find that experience helpful. I found them to be argumentative, protective, and unempathetic to issues they deem as not within their remit.
What are your thoughts then, Peter, on whether the FCA lacks the powers that it needs, or conversely, that it doesn't make good use of the powers it already has?
Well, from my experience only, there is definitely a strong desire not to get involved in bad behaviour by regulated persons, misadvising retail clients to invest in scams. Neither are the scams investigated after being reported. The Financial Conduct Authority, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, the Pensions Regulator, the Pensions Ombudsman Service, the Financial Ombudsman Service, Insolvency Service, Police, Serious Fraud Office, National Crime Agency, and the Prudential Regulation Authority all operate in bubbles with very limited coordination between them. This means that each could fulfill their remit and allow fraud to go undetected and unpunished. Unlike in the United States and Australia, from which I have considerable experience, there is no overarching agency or laws to identify and investigate bad actors in financial services. For instance, no Federal Bureau of Investigation or Securities and Exchange Commission. In the US, there is a federal crime known as wire fraud. This requires that a person not misdescribe an investment, and if they do so, obtain money by deception. It carries a mandatory jail sentence of up to 30 years. This white-collar law has no equivalent, and nobody interested in either investigating or holding especially regulated persons to account in the UK. The Financial Conduct Authority is not the Securities and Exchange Commission, as it has much less scope and powers. A good example is the successful case against the directors of Avocade, also known as Alexandra Associates. They have been found guilty under Section 21 of the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000 for advising retail clients to invest in a regulated activity for which they received £91 million in revenue. That is the people who are recommending that. They have been fined £10.7 million for so doing, whereas the IFAs and pension companies that approve the transfers and promotions of unregulated investments to retail clients and receive secret commissions for so doing have had their companies liquidated with no punishment or even removal of authorization to be FCA regulated. They have continued as regulated persons working for regulated companies.
Peter, thank you again. Have you experienced any difficulties or shortcomings in your interactions with the FCA?
Yes, as I said in my previous statement.
And the next question is, have you experienced the FCA being reluctant to give clear answers to questions?
Yes, direct questions get responses that are obtuse and dismissive. As if how could a director of a firm of solicitors understand the nuances and responsibilities of the Financial Conduct Authority?
What is your perception of the culture of the Financial Conduct Authority, and what do you think of it?
Well, in inverted commas, it is not our role or within our remit to be responsible to investigate. Encapsulates that it is used to dismiss inquiries of inaction or disinterest in matters where regulated persons led clients to believe for personal advantage, causing them lifetime financial and psychological damage. Or clients of regulated firms have the Ombudsman Service to complain to if the firm they have a problem with dismisses their complaint. And if the firm becomes insolvent, there is the Financial Services Compensation Scheme to obtain financial redress. However, the Ombudsman takes up to 5 years to adjudicate a dispute. However, and once a firm becomes insolvent, complaints are passed to the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, which has a totally different method of handling complaints and far less to pay compensation with, if upheld, £350,000 by the Financial Ombudsman Service compared to £85,000 by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. The Financial Ombudsman Service can consider complaints regarding investment promotion. The FSCS, the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, can't, and many other anomalies.
Peter, have you ever complained officially about the FCA? If so, to whom? What happened, and how do you feel about what happened? What feedback, if any, have you had about your complaint? How helpful was the feedback? How long has it taken to get your complaint to be processed?
Well, I've never formally complained to the Financial Conduct Authority. I have complained formally about the Financial Ombudsman Service to them directly and to the Treasury Subcommittee, but the complaints got nowhere, and in fact, I got no response.
What do you think, Peter, about the possibility of conflicts of interest issues at the FCA?
Well, I think there's a considerable amount of conflict of interest at the FCA. Firstly, other than what I consider a token non-financial services background director, all are members of the Financial Services Club. There appears to be disinterest in the personal harm done to hundreds of thousands of ordinary people in the UK by bad regulated actors. It always seems to other agencies' role to investigate and act, not the Financial Conduct Authority. The example of Avocade above, as I mentioned, is typical. In Australia, there was a board of management from non-financial services industries that has oversight of the boards of the equivalent to the Financial Conduct Authority. This is essential to remove bias and poor behaviour based on culture of banking and finance's view of providing financial services to retail clients. Why aren't individual IFAs held to account instead of the companies they work for? Bad independent financial advisors and company directors keep their regulated status and continue to work in the industry while their victims suffer life-changing harm. A rather recent example is the Financial Conduct Authority now regulates claims management companies, and the companies, claims management companies, act against regulated, in other words, financial advisors. The Financial Conduct Authority does not regulate solicitors who provide the same service. This is the equivalent to the police arresting, charging, and judging those found to be accused of breaking the law.
Peter, do you believe there should be spot checks by the FCA on regulated and or unregulated entities, perhaps similar to the spot checks by VAT inspectors?
No. I believe there needs to be a root and branch change to ensure that both the Financial Conduct Authority and actors involved in financial services firms, especially including insolvency practitioners and the officiary receiver, be undertaken. The Financial Conduct Authority and associated bodies are not fit for purpose and should be radically changed bottom up to reveal bad behaviour and be able to punish those who use the regulations that apply regardless of who creates them.
And what positives are there about the FCA that you would like to comment on?
I can't think of any.
If you could change 3 things, Peter, about the FCA, what would they be?
1, investigate how fit for purpose the Financial Conduct Authority is in protecting UK citizens of financial misbehaviour. Then apply what is found to be bad practice and reorganise and replace management, including board of directors, with less biased but competent people with a much better attitude and culture. 2, provide an oversight of the Financial Conduct Authority with power to change and react to poor performance, keeping in mind one thing: protecting the people and enabling better financial services for all. 3, create a separate agency with similar powers and investigation, the equivalent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Securities and Exchange Commission in in America.
The Financial Conduct Authority is undertaking a transformation project. Do you have any comments to make about that?
From my experience, I can only believe it will be far more cosmetic and not progressive given past performance.
Are there any other comments that you would like to make, Peter?
1, there is the strong possibility that the banking and finance sector has too much power and influence over government and politicians for change to be meaningful.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. That brings us to the end of the question set that you've already provided a written submission to. We're very grateful to you, Peter, for taking time to provide the written submission and also spending time with me today in this this conversation. We will, as quickly as we can, get the video up onto the APPG's website. We'll do what we can to draw attention to it through social media. And it's been very helpful of you, Peter, to be a part of this call for evidence by the all-party parliamentary group on personal banking and fairer financial services. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.